The days are longer, the calendar is filling up, and I want to feel as good as this beautiful summer weather. That's why I've been loving Groons. It's one daily pack of gummies that covers my greens, vitamins, and minerals, and even has 6 grams of prebiotic fiber. So I don't need to juggle a complicated wellness routine on top of everything else. They taste amazing. They're easy to toss in my bag on the go. Plus, they're vegan, gluten-free, and HSA, FSA eligible for reimbursement. Save up to 52% off with promo code podcast at Gruns.co. That's code podcast at GRUNS.co.
Hi, everybody. This is Dawn Mitchell, and welcome to Dawn of Sports. This week we have an amazing guest, and it's perfect just coming off of a lot of the basketball hype that's going on, and now the Timberwolves are starting up. There's just such a love of basketball here in Minnesota. We're going to talk to Jessie Stomski, and if you have not heard of her, let me tell you, a woman really forging a path not only for young women just in sports in general, but also for Native American men, women, boys, girls, just to find their way in sports. It's such a strong voice and such a beautiful person. I can't wait for you guys to hear from her.
Yes, this is Dawn of Sports. We're coming to you from the Aquarius Home Services Studios. Our producer today, Alex Haugen. Best way to listen to this show or any of the many shows at our network, please subscribe to your favorite podcast app. It's free. It's the easiest way to listen. Thanks to our longtime sponsors, Rudy Luther Toyota, longtime sponsor of this network, also longtime supporter of women's sports. Minnesota Masonic Charities doing such great work across our state. And, of course, the ad that Dawn can't wait to hear me read, Natrium, natrium.com, gummies, THC, CBD, all the stuff that keeps me from going crazy. All right, so Dawn, please reintroduce our guests and take it away.
Well, why I wanted to have Jessie on here, Jessie, because you and I met when we were doing the Title IX stories, but and I didn't even know. It accidentally was the fact that it was Native American Heritage Month, but I wanted to talk to you because of basketball, so that our timing just seems to be perfect. So people should know first that you're the general counsel for Prairie Island. You're an enrolled citizen of the Muskogee Nation, and you were in the Hall of Fame for Wisconsin basketball. First of all, kudos to you on that. That's hard it's hard to be a Hall of Famer.
Hard to sometimes believe I am, but thank you.
You're so humble. That's another thing I love about you. Just coming off this year where women's basketball in particular, just a little slice of your life, has just exploded. And you must be beaming with pride just to see how that's changed.
Yes, I was at the final series watching the Lynx and just looking around and seeing every level of the Target Center full or almost full, and thinking back, after I was at Wisconsin, I got drafted to the Charlotte Sting, which I think became the Chicago Sky eventually. But, there was nobody at the games, and to see the evolution makes me super proud. I also have to eat some of my words because I didn't think this was ever going to happen.
Really?
I didn't. I thought maybe I didn't give enough credit to, audiences and men who are the main consumers of sports for changing. And it was never because the game wasn't interesting and our women aren't interesting, but I couldn't see it with my limited view and my experience. And so I'm so happy to be wrong and to have watched that unfold over the last few years, and to see the NCAA tournament this year and that convert to the WNBA. And not just that, right? Soccer. And there's all of these things, and it's just so wonderful to see.
It's funny. Years ago, Cheryl Reeve and I had a discussion about the term non-revenue sports, right? So we became beaten down actually by that. Like, we're an NRS.
And then there's us.
That's the way it is. So it's not even a matter of eating words, right? If you can't see the forest for the trees and you just think, well, this is how it's always going to be. But then you see people are like, no, if you put us in front of it, it's a great product. You can't just listen to the people that are like, oh, they can't play, because just go.
Oh, yeah.
Just go and find out.
Absolutely. And, the women's game just continues to get better.
Yeah.
I think, gosh, I would never get drafted now because I was just, a big old post player. There's reasons for that. I think the development of youth sports and girls' opportunities are just on par with boys, right? Like
Yes.
I have a 9-year-old and 11-year-old. They don't know a world where they don't have the same chances to play in programs, in development, all of that, the same level of coaching at young ages. They don't know that world where that was the world that I grew up in. I mean, I feel like I'm aging myself. I'm almost 45, but just in those short years, things have changed incredibly. And so all of these factors, I think, play into where we're at today in this wonderful moment.
You're also a Minnesota native. You went to Tartan High School, I believe, if I'm remembering correctly.
You're correct. Good memory.
Oakdale, right? Is that where that is?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Look at me pulling out. Shoo. So to see, I felt the same way. Of course, I am not a Minnesota native, but I have been around. I played basketball growing up, and in high school, I didn't play it in college. But when I got here in 2004, and I thought the same thing about the Lynx, and we even saw it progress to when they won their first championships, where that upper bowl was closed and the curtains were out. And I remember being at the game and actually getting teary. Like I found myself, I'm not a crier. I'm not like a super emotional
I felt
person.
the same way.
And I was like, wow. It's amazing. And you have to take the slings and arrows, too, that come with it, right? People are going to pick apart calls and plays and players, but that kind of comes with that equality, don't you think?
Oh, for sure. Being on top, having that attention comes with all sorts of things. But to me, when I was looking in the crowd and just watching this time, it's about so much more than just the game and just sports, because what I love is the women who've I encountered through sports, and then what they go on to do in the rest of their life, or in other parts of their life. And to me, that's the real joy of women's sports, is that there's any one of these women that we watch, or anyone associated with the game. There's so much more to us, and I feel it gives us an opportunity to tell those stories.
Well, your path too, and we have spoken about this in the past, but your path too, you've decided that with my opportunities that sports gave me and with my education, I'm going to help my culture and I'm going to give back. And you could have easily not. You could have easily just kind of said, hey, I'm gonna go get my law degree and just do things and rake in some cash and not do some good. What made you say, I want to help Native Americans? And also, in general, you then help the sports when it comes to that, but your heart is with helping them in any way you can.
Absolutely. It's critical to me. And to answer your question, I'll kind of go a little bit in the Wayback Machine. I had a Native family and a non. My dad's Native. He's Muskogee and was born down in Oklahoma on the Creek Reservation. And my mom is German. And, from a very young age, my identity was with my dad and his family, but I also was very observant of their experience, right, as Native people, and how that was different. And then as I grew, I got to see just the broader inequities and the history and why things even now are the way they are. And what was always present with me is the need someday to be able to contribute to that and to honor my dad and my grandma and my aunties and uncles and ancestors. And I didn't know how that would shake out really, but it was just something that was always going to be a part of me. Nobody in my family went to college, and so I remember being in a little gym, and the east side of St. Paul, and an AAU coach came and watched me play, and he pulled me aside and he said, you're going to be able to go to any college you want. You're not going to have to pay. You're going to, basketball is your ticket. And I was just like, wow. That was the first time I ever thought about going to college.
Yeah.
And, I had a lot of bumps along the way. I was also kind of a wild child. But basketball was just this outlet for me that kept me on track enough to get to a point where, I realized that this education and the opportunities from sports could turn into something else. So my dad was he served time in prison, and then in a strange twist of fate that would never happen now, but it did in the 70s, he became a prison guard at Stillwater and Oak Park Heights. And so I became fascinated with the law in that way, and he would drive me over to William Mitchell at the time and say, you could go to law school and you could be a lawyer. And we would just sit there and look at the school. And so eventually I did that when I got done playing basketball. And I, again, didn't know exactly what it would look like for me to contribute to Native issues, but it became clearer as I went down my career path and ended up going to I was at one of the bigger firms in town, and then went to an Indian law boutique firm and became general counsel for Prairie Island 9 years ago. So that allowed me to use all of these things, because the skills that I gained in basketball very much are part of how I do my work now. Mm-hmm. And every day I try to further our issues, no matter what they are, whether environmental, fighting for our sovereignty, making sure we are preserving our culture, just health and well-being of our communities, all of that. But I don't. Somebody asked me recently, what do you want your legacy to be? And I said, I don't want a legacy. I want the work to be done. Mm. I want it to be done. And I don't care if anybody knows it's me. I just want to contribute.
So do you, just like you said in basketball, you didn't think you'd ever see that in your lifetime. Mm-hmm. Now we're seeing lakes here in Minnesota change back to the native name. We're seeing presidents apologizing. Mm-hmm. We're seeing lands given back. Any of these three, did you ever think that you would see in your lifetime?
Not growing up, not until recently, being part of advocating for it. Because there are a lot of good people in different levels of government and everywhere that it really took a lot of education and awareness. And I give full credit to tribal leaders, at the Prairie Island Indian Community, the leaders that I work with. There's a 5-person elected council, and all of the leaders of the Minnesota tribes and my own tribe in Oklahoma, work very, very hard to increase that awareness. Because it's, people are doing the right things and doing these things not now because of some pressure. It's because they're learning and understanding, and we're creating those relationships. So, as the years have gone by, I do become a little more hopeful for these changes that we're seeing. But 20 years ago, no, I didn't think these things would happen either.
The one thing that really does frustrate me is growing up, and I was a good student. It's not like I wasn't paying attention in class. It just wasn't taught about the Tulsa bombings or anything that happened. I even grew up in New England. You didn't know anything about what happened to Native American culture or how people were treated. Even now Hollywood is coming around as well. But it's not really told by the Native American perspective still. But although I loved that movie.
Yes, Killers of the Flower Moon.
Yes.
A great movie, and we're seeing a lot more of that. We're seeing more stories being told. The education piece, just for a moment, the tribes are working with the state agencies and local communities to start to create curriculum that's from the Native perspective. And so that, too, I feel like for a long time has been just terrible. My own children are learning stories about Sacagawea that are not the truth. She was a child victim, and that's not the story that's told. Pocahontas, same thing. These are victims, and so I'm glad that there's work being done on that. With respect to Hollywood, there's we celebrate movies like Killers of the Flower Moon and other shows that have now narratives around Native people, like both historical and today. But it also gives us an opportunity to talk about who's still telling our stories and how we get the Native perspective to be the writers, to be the producers and the actors. And there is a ton of talent that's emerging too. Reservation Dogs was on FX, and that's actually set on the Muskogee Reservation, and was pretty much all Native production, writing cast, crew, actors, and it was really well received. And so the more of that we can get, I think the more you're really going to see not just the historical stories, but also today Native people. There's such huge diversity. I always make sure to be clear that my story isn't being born and raised on a reservation and dealing with a lot of the experiences that Native people still deal with today that are directly tied to historical traumas and historical violence. But I get to use, again, my basketball and the platform that I had there, which led to my education, which leads me to be a lawyer, and now gives me the ability to be, even in rooms like this, talking about that experience and where we go from here.
When it comes to sports, and just from being on let alone a woman, and then just wanting to give back and wanting to reach back and say, yes, I played the sport and I loved it, but it also, like you said, gave me skills. Taught me how to win graciously. Taught me how to lose. Taught me how to do group environments, how to lift someone up, it's psychology as well. And then you add on that you also want to help other Native American women and young boys to get involved in sports so that they can move forward. What is still the biggest hurdle? How can you change that because you have to start young, right?
Yeah, it's all connected. It's all interrelated. I do work with the Indigenous Athletic Advancement Council, IAAC, and that you'll recall was a lot of our work around the Final Four, to use that as a platform for awareness and opportunity. But yeah, Native athletes in the NCAA, that statistic just came out that I want to celebrate. But before that, the statistic from the past was that less than 0.5% of student athletes in the NCAA are Native. And that's disproportionate, one, to just, I think under the census it's 3%, but also what role sports play in our tribal communities. And with Native people, basketball is hugely popular. We have a whole culture around res ball tournaments, and just if you go into many tribal communities, you will see that sports is important. And that's historical. That's pre-contact competition and engagement like that was part of our ancestors' way of life. But it's not materializing into opportunities to play in the NCAA and the professional levels as it should. But just recently, we got a statistic that it's up 31% in the last 10 years. So I'm so happy to report that we are making progress. But the factors, to your question, are dynamic. So one is early opportunity to play organized sports, to have that level of coaching and support. A lot of our communities are still working on more basic needs, and a lot of the communities are rural, so you don't have those populations to have access to opportunities and resources. I give one example is AAU basketball, and then that's now where you go and get recruited, right, over the summer, off season. And those competitive teams that go to nationals, that go get seen, they're in the cities. Well, Red Lake Reservation, Leech Lake Reservation, they're up north for 5 hours, you're not going to be able to play on those really competitive teams, even if you do have the talent. And so that is one piece of it. But the other is a lack of knowledge and awareness in recruiting from tribal communities and stigma. Racism, the belief that you're going to bring a Native kid in and you're bringing in a host of problems instead of a wealth of talent and abundance, right? A lot of times Native people today are looked at from this deficit perspective. Mm-hmm. And we really work to turn that around to, yes, we still deal with a lot of issues, addiction, health issues, violence, all of that, violence to Native people in particular. But there's abundance. There's a beautiful culture. There's intelligence, there's athleticism, there's beauty, so much, everything. So, I work with the NCAA and with professional teams as well to make them aware of this talent that they're not seeing, and then the abundance of having Native players be part of the experience of the teams.
How has that changed you now being involved with professional sports to try to open their eyes?
It has, it's given me another way that I can contribute, mm-hmm. and it's meaningful to me, because when I see the statistic come out that in the last 10 years there's 31% more Native athletes, I have to feel like we're doing something. And it's certainly, again, not me. I would never make that connection. But our collective effort and the kids who are doing the work and, who are going. If you think about going from a tribal community even to college, it's a completely different world and universe. So our kids are being brave and strong and going and doing that. And that's all just very exciting.
What are the tribal communities nowadays in terms of, there's so much with social media too, mm-hmm. They're dealing with so many more pressures. First of all, young in this whole world, you're dealing with that. Mm-hmm. And then sometimes you said, they're so far away from bigger cities. Yeah. How do you bridge that gap? How do you get them involved with other teams? Like, mm-hmm. You have to get down to brass tacks, right? What's the transportation situation? Right. How can we have them compete? How can we have them, have mental, health mm-hmm. backup and professionals to help them? Because just being on social media as a young kid anyway is hard. Yeah.
Well, it really is building up capacity in local communities and making sure that there's resources that some as simple as basketball shoes, mm-hmm. and it's really not just the more rural communities, but we have a urban Indian community here in Minneapolis, and a ton of kids playing sports and stuff, but making sure that they have those it's building blocks, right? So how do we have the basics of shoes and getting to practice and having the coaches there, to having the money to go travel to these tournaments. So really, I think the focus is on basics at this point.
I want to hear a lot more. Let's take care of the business, then we'll let Dawn and Jessie resume the conversation. We do want to thank our longest running sponsor, Rudy Luther Toyota.
Ready for a women-forward car dealership? Rudy Luther Toyota empowers their many women on staff in sales, management, and service. Whether you are looking for a new Toyota or pre-owned vehicle, Rudy Luther Toyota has something for everyone. Every vehicle comes with a Luther Advantage. 10 cents off fuel and car wash discounts at holiday stations, Luther Advantage warranty, and 5-day return policy on pre-owned vehicles. Located just 5 minutes west of downtown Minneapolis, off 394 and General Mills Boulevard. And they're also hiring. Want to join the team but don't know where to start? Visit rudyluthertoyota.com today.
Thanks again to Minnesota Masonic Charities.
When people think of the Freemasons, they often think of secret handshakes and unusual hats, and of course, the pancake breakfast. Minnesota Masonic Charities would prefer that you think about the work that they do right here in our community. Places like the Masonic Cancer Center at the University of Minnesota, or the Masonic Children's Hospital and the Masonic Home in Bloomington. They are just a few examples of the important work that the Freemasons support here in Minnesota. As part of the largest fraternal organization in the world, Masons have consistently answered the call when it comes to charitable needs. I am happy that Minnesota Masonic Charities has chosen Minnesota Bound and this podcast as a place to help spread the word. We look forward to learning so much more about their many programs here in the weeks to come.
And Dawn, I'm going to try not to get too excited about this part.
Oh, your BFF?
Yes.
Yeah.
Natrium, Natreum, natrium.com. They also have wildflower stores. I have 2 within walking distance where I live in Minneapolis. There's also a very large Natrium in St. Louis Park. I recommend going to their stores and checking them out. Balms, antifungal stuff, anti-infectious stuff, antibacterial. They have gummies. They have dips, drinks, gels, basically anything you could want if you're looking for relaxation, pain relief, sleep aids. I use the sleep aids mostly. My wife likes some of the more fun gummies. Just if you're going to sit and watch TV on a Tuesday night, pop a gummy in, you might enjoy it a little bit more. For me, I'm an old, tired person. I want to not be in pain, and I want to be able to sleep well, and that's what I use their stuff for. But the cool thing is if you go to the store, you'll realize just how many different products there are. Amazing number of different drinks. They all have different ingredients. Some are THC, some are CBD. If you go there, their sales associates are really knowledgeable, really passionate about what they do. And they're beautiful stores. Go check it out. If you can't make it, then you can always order online at natrium.com. They have very few ingredients. They're very simple. They're healthy. I have been using them for a long time now. Highly recommend it. So natrium.com and Natrium or Wildflower stores. Back to you, Dawn.
Well, thank you. And I should probably thank them for you.
Yes, you should.
There you go, because we love you. So, hey, if you're happy and you're well rested, that's even better. It's a win-win. Well, Jessie, I want to ask you this. Well, you say your own children now are finding their way, whether they're athletic or not, and not in terms of a legacy. But what is perhaps your biggest lesson to them in terms of their culture and not just being their mom? Mm-hmm. What do you try to instill to them?
Oh, man. Being a mom to 2 strong girls is really hard. I mean, sometimes I feel like I'm just trying to survive. What I'm teaching them is yet to be determined. One thing about growing up in a certain way, I'm not, I don't try to say, I had this horrible upbringing, but, differently than my girls did in a lot of ways. And I've worked really hard to get to a place where they don't have to worry about anything. They're in a stable home, they're supported and loved. But then where do I teach them that grit?
Yeah.
Like because I feel like mine kind of created itself due to a number of factors. And how does that come to be in kids who have everything, and sometimes I feel frustrated, like, these kids, they have it all, and, or they're not doing it on their own, but, there's a beauty in that because I've supported them and they have something that, maybe I didn't always have. And so their path is not my path, and how they develop that character is up to them. With respect to our culture as Muskogee people, it's kind of hard from Minnesota. I bring, in particular, my youngest daughter down to make sure that she knows family, that she knows where she comes from. But that's something that hopefully as they get older, they will continue to embrace and follow that journey themselves.
I know I have friends that have young daughters, and not even the grit factor, just for them to stay sane, just in terms of raising young women these days. But, when you talk about the grit factor, as a mom, it must be like, I'm happy they don't have to deal with it, but I don't want something else to knock them over, right? Because this world is hard. So it's that ever-loving balance of trying to do that.
Exactly.
I'm sure, right?
Oh, exactly. How to prepare them and protect them. I think that's a question we all ask ourselves. But one thing I really try to focus on too is how they interact with other girls, because that equates to how we treat each other as women. And I don't know what it is in little girls that make them be really nasty to each other. But that's a really important thing to me, and I see it. it's in how I operate. There was a good friend of mine, but years ago we had competed for the same opportunity, and just recently she told me, when we were competing for that opportunity, as others saw it, I never saw it that way, but she said, I asked people about you because I didn't know if you were going to try to, do something, to me or this opportunity, or if you were really genuine in how you were presenting yourself. And I was like, wow, I'd never think like that. I love other women. I try to find opportunities more than I even try to find opportunities for myself. And it's unfortunate that that's something that, being a woman, you have to deal with other women sometimes who don't operate like that. And so with my children, I really try to focus on that dynamic.
I have seen, especially in my field, more and more the camaraderie of women, and lifting and helping each other up. I think when I first got in the business, it did not happen to me, thankfully, but a friend of mine had an opportunity and happened to be on a baseball field and was covering a game, and an intern or an assistant came over and asked her to leave. Like, you have to leave. And she's like, well, why? He said, you just have to leave. And you could tell he had the marching orders from someone else. Well, a higher up woman who was also on air wanted to be the only woman on the field and wanted her to leave.
Yeah.
And I remember looking at my friend saying, you do not move. You don't, you don't do that to other women, right? But she's like, I have to. Like, she's the big deal. And I still remember thinking, I still don't feel the same way about that person. I'll never name that person, but when this person really isn't in media that much anymore, and she was on a national level, I remember really thinking differently about her. And then kind of feeling bad for my friend because she felt like she had to leave. I think that would not happen in this day and age. And I see so many women now on the national level that are standout, amazing women broadcasters. They support other women. And Leslie Visser, who was my mentor, I remember I wasn't even on air, and she said, the more women I see when I'm at an event that are in this business, it just makes me so happy. So I luckily had a mentor she goes, you should really be on air and this and that. So
lifted you up.
Women supporting women. I think that's part of my mission. Jim knows that. I want to support other women. That's why I want this show.
Your show, yeah.
I also don't want other women to be like, oh, men are terrible. Like,
no. We
men
love our
help me
men
get
too.
here. Yeah.
Only some men are terrible.
Just like some women, right? That's why we have the FTG we got to get back to.
It's true.
At some
You're
point.
right.
But I really think, and I don't know if there's in the bigger woo-woo picture, if there's an enlightenment going on, but I really believe that that's changing.
I was watching or listening to a woo-woo podcast, and there's say something about, there is like a feminine, some cycle of the earth that is coming, and I have no idea. I'm not that woo-woo. I just listen once in a while to these podcasts. But I also see just generationally, so the women who came before us had to break through to places where there were no women, and they had to do it in a certain way, right? When I started practicing law, the women who had been practicing for a while, who were, again, on this sort of, they were the first or early attorneys, they did it, they had a way about them that was very stern, and I think they felt that they needed to be that way, harsh, hard, and I give them all the credit in the world for being in spaces where they weren't wanted or they were treated differently, but I think we're the beneficiary of that, and that we get to do things maybe more authentically. When I thought about becoming an attorney, I thought I was going to be this tough, just hard and a great, this killer. And the more I got into it, the more I realized it's the other skill set that really makes you effective. And even now, as I work with my clients, and particular tribal clients, Prairie Island now, we talk about this, do you want to fight or do you want to win? That's become one of my themes.
Wow,
and
I like that.
it stems from, I was a very aggressive basketball player at Wisconsin. My freshman year, I averaged like 4.7 fouls a game, which is, I was fouling out of every single game. But then I wasn't in the game when it was time to win, right? I wasn't there for my teammates. And so I had to learn how to hone that fight in me, because otherwise I wasn't helping us win. And so by my senior, that changed. But that really is something then in the practice of law. We have so many issues that we're fighting for tribal communities, for tribal nations, and for Native people, and there's this historical wrongs of boarding school, termination, assimilation, all of it that still carries with us. And so we want to fight. We want to be angry. We want to scream. We want to sue everybody. We want to do all the things that feel like we're fighting for our people and for our ancestors. But is that how we win in the modern day? And so, when I talk to people in my role now, it's like, we can fight. We'll fight all day. I'll fight to the death. But is that going to get us to our goals? Are we going to further these issues? And so some of them now roll their eyes when they hear the mantra come out. But really, that has been something that has carried me a long way too.
I'm not comparing it, but it is true. I remember I was in Vegas once with a group of my friends, and there's on the corner, there's someone on a pulpit yelling and screaming, and saying, you're all gonna go to hell, blah blah blah, that kind of stuff. And people are just like running away. And I said, see, this is the perfect example of how you're saying your message is not like, who's your audience, So I think many people have to learn that lesson. Like, I know I was sent to my room a lot of times because I had 4 brothers, and I was trying to get my point across, but it was not proper.
Yeah.
And so, so I remember, my dad would say, don't be a yeah, but, because he'd be like, did you just raise your fist to your brother? And now I didn't hit him. I'm like, yeah, but it's like, don't be a yeah, but, go to your room. And I'd be like, I remember thinking, I couldn't express myself. And then later, my parents were older, and they were saying, oh my gosh, we did this to her and she didn't cry. We did this to her and she didn't. My parents are horrified. I'm like, why didn't you say something? I tried. And I said, so you know what? What are the 2 things that I wanted to do? I either want to be a lawyer or a journalist. And I said, see, that's what happens when you don't let me speak my mind. And they're like, it's not that you were going to speak, it was how you were doing it.
How you were doing it, yeah.
And I remember, okay. And then my dad also said we should have let her speak. Because now she's a journalist and she won't shut up.
You got the last laugh.
But it is so true. I love that. Do you want to fight or do you want to win? That's a great thing.
And going back to the women and how we lead, and that I really feel like now, at least for myself, I get to lead authentically, and I get to lead with love too. We are more than just like, I can't section that part off of me when I go to work, because that is, I think, how, in particular with the work that I do, maybe it's different if I were working for a corporation and, what my focus was, I'm there to get a paycheck. But, everything now that I do with love in my heart for, my family and the issues that I'm trying to address.
And also, for years, men have helped other men rise.
Yeah.
And just because there's only one woman at the office, so many people say to me, why do you help young women so much? What if they go and they take your job? And just like you, I was like, I've never even looked at it that way.
And I hope they do.
Exactly. I said, if they do, then it's time for me to move on.
Then there's something else for me.
Yes.
Like in the whole spectrum of it, that's okay. If that happens, okay.
Yeah. I said, I've never thought of it that way. And if they go on and it's like a parent, you want them to do better.
Yeah. Right.
You want them to have bigger jobs, and you want them to reach back and help other women up. And I said, wow, it's kind of like white knuckling something. If you do, you're going to lose it anyway.
Yeah,
and I said, no,
exactly.
I don't want to be like that. I want to be able to help someone. And if they're awesome and they're better, and then it's my turn. Because at some point, You're going to be older and retire anyway. You want
Yeah.
the next generation to really do well and to do it for the right reasons.
And to not always feel like they gotta watch their back, that there are people out there supporting them. And I do feel like that has changed, and I'm happy to be where we're at. I also have to say, though, I haven't experienced a lot of negativity or I guess oppression at the hand of men in my professional career. And I think part of it is that I don't let it exist.
Yeah.
It doesn't exist. I will not allow it. I will not see it if it happens. I'm focused on whatever my goal and objective is, and we get that done. And if there's a roadblock, we go another way and we get that done. And so maybe it's happened and I'm just not aware of it, but I refuse to let it exist in my experience as something that holds me back.
Yeah, I think that's beautiful because sometimes people see things that aren't there.
Exactly. Yes. Okay. So I'll go into another tangent, but I was hiking recently and I up this mountain and it was beautiful, right? It was really hot. There was rocks. I loved the experience. I was just reveling in it, and I got to the top and having these moments. And on the way down, a snake slid past my foot, and I'm more afraid of snakes than anything at all. And I froze. I was paralyzed. I couldn't move. And then all of a sudden, all I could hear was snakes around me, and everything that moved was a snake. And I took a step and waited a couple minutes, and then took another step because I was just certain there's snakes everywhere. Well, of course, there's snakes on the mountain, right? I mean, that's their home. But I wasn't focusing on the snakes on my way up, and all I did was experience this beautiful mountain and myself and everything else. And when I was in that moment after I saw one, my whole focus and thought process was on snakes, and so I was certain they were everywhere. And I talked myself out where I was able to, get down the mountain. Mm-hmm. At one point, I was like, somebody's gonna have to come get me. But it was that snake was my teacher that day, because if all I'm doing is focusing on the snakes, then that's what my experience is going to be. And so, the broader lesson is, what you focus on. I would choose to focus on the positivity and the beauty and the ways that we can move forward, and not what's holding us back, not these things that exist. You have to be aware, but you don't have to make them what your experience is if you don't want to.
That's a great metaphor for life. It's true. Because we've all been there, right? You don't trust anyone. And that's not the way you want to go through life. No. And you're shutting out some great people, and people that can help you, people that can trust, can be your comrade, your friend. I love that. I really do. I want to close with this. If there is someone out there listening, whether it's a young girl or a young boy, it doesn't matter, and they want to help, and they want to extend some help to maybe a child that is on a reservation or someone that is trying to find their way. How can people not of the Native American culture help?
I get that question a lot, and I need to find a good answer, because really our communities can be pretty, I don't want to say closed off, because that's not true, but we're focusing on how we lift ourselves up. But I think the most important thing is is understanding the true history, and that Native people are still here today, but they're not different. Like, it's not, we're all having this human experience. But one example, my best friend, Michaela, she's from a tribe up north, and a tribe from Oklahoma both. But we were at Target in Stillwater, and she was checking out with her granddaughter. I've never seen an asset protection person come in that Target. I've never seen somebody come out of this door, but they burned out of that door to stop my friend Michaela, who is Native and, very clearly Native. She can't take it on and off. I am mixed and can walk in this world in different places, and it's not, I don't have that experience that my friends, my own relatives, my father, I would watch him have that experience. But she was stopped. She was mortified. She was made to go through her whole bag. And I guess my ask or my response to your question right in this moment as I'm thinking is that people be aware of their inherent bias and work on that. Because that really, yes, you could go and, you could donate, you could volunteer, you could do all these things, but at a very human level, if we're not working on our inherent bias and how we're engaging on a day-to-day basis, it's really not meaningful. So I guess inner work, recognizing our biases and how we don't pass that on to the next generations.
Absolutely. I was thinking of my childhood, and I wish I could ask my mom now that I'm older. My mom has passed. But growing up, my mom also loved ceramics, and she would always do the bust and the head of chieftains and their headdresses. And we had dream catchers on the wall in our. We had a den downstairs, and she was just fascinated with Native American culture, loved it.
Yeah.
I mean, we had that in our house. So it's something I just grew up loving. And then when you hear stories like that, the ignorance is learned, right?
Yeah.
Or what you don't know. Is what, and that kind of makes me sad. So I want to help be an advocate. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, and what you just shared was a really good example of sort of the fantasy view of Native spirituality, Native culture, Native art versus the reality, which includes those things, but in a spiritual way. And let's not just take the things that we love from a culture, but not be willing to challenge ourselves to the other sides of it and our own bias and how those may not be consistent.
Yes.
So having those type of conversations with ourselves.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I appreciate you coming in. I'm always in awe of you and the work that you do. And
Thank you.
And just being an athlete too, and a strong woman and an advocate. It's really a gift. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Mado, which is thank you in Muskogee. I love what you do. I love that you focus on lifting up women and stories and give us a platform to share. So, cheers to you too.
Mado.
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 Inga.